If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm your host, Kathryn Hansen, and for those of you listening for the first time today, I'm the author of 2 books on binge eating recovery. My first book was Brain Over Binge, which was my own personal story of recovery, and my second book is the Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide, which is a self-help book based on the same brain-based concepts that helped me recover and that help so many others recover as well. My goal in this podcast and in my books is to make recovery practical and attainable for everyone. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I address topics that binge eaters often have questions about or issues that frequently come up during recovery. Today I'm going to talk about a very common issue, and that is night eating. And I'll just get right into it. The first thing I want you to know is that there's a difference between night eating and night binge eating. It is actually common for binge eaters to binge more often at night than at other times during the day, but just because you may be eating at night or eating what you feel might be a little too much at night, that does not automatically mean that the behavior is a problem or that you're binge eating. There's a difference between night eating that would be considered normal and night eating that's problematic. And one of the problematic forms of night eating is binge eating at night. But even people who have never binged can have nighttime cravings that may sometimes feel problematic. And when you stop binge eating, you may find yourself having food cravings at night. Something that may be happening for you if you're currently a binge eater is that even when you have a day that you don't binge, you might still end up feeling like you're overeating a little bit at night or maybe snacking too much at night, and you aren't really sure what to make of this. The way that night eating is related to binge eating could play out in many different ways, but I just want you to know up front that eating at night and binge eating at night are actually 2 different things. If you're binge eating at night, the solution for that is the same as it is during any other time of day. You'll need to dismiss that urge to binge. For a more thorough discussion about dismissing urges, you can check out episodes 4 through 8, which explain the 5 components of dismissing urges to binge. And like I said, you can use those 5 components any time of day, including at night or even in the middle of the night. In this podcast today, I'm going to be talking about night eating a little more generally. I'm not just talking about night binge eating. And I'm doing that because I find that even though some people can see that what they're doing at night is not actually a binge, it also may not feel good either. And if you're someone who finds yourself eating frequently at night and even overeating at night, you may want to figure out what to do about this behavior. You may feel bothered by some late night food cravings and wonder if giving in to them means that you're overindulging or means that you're following the lower brain. Or does it mean that this behavior is the same as binging? Or you could be someone who was previously a restrictive dieter, and now you're learning to nourish your body and eat well and eat adequately. And you may wonder, if you ignore your night cravings, is that a problem? Does that mean you're being too restrictive or that you're not allowing yourself to eat enough? And that's a valid concern. My opinion on this is that there's no one right answer to exactly how much you should or should not eat at night. And you have to look at your own unique set of circumstances and learn to navigate the balance between restriction and overindulging, because you don't want to be doing either. Well, at least you don't want to be overindulging very frequently. And the thing is, nighttime is when you may have the most opportunities to find that balance of when to follow some cravings and when not to, without that turning into restriction. Most people don't get up in the morning craving a dessert or a piece of cake, but after the work of the day is done, or when you finally get a chance to relax, that dessert might seem much more appealing. This is true for binge eaters and non-binge eaters. Nighttime food cravings, especially for sugar and unhealthy food, are very common. And I'm going to give you some insight into why this is the case. One study that I cited in my second book found that appetite and interest in food peaks at about 8 p.m. as just a part of our natural circadian rhythm. So when you find yourself craving a sugary snack after dinner, or after you put the kids to bed, or after you return home from a late evening party, know that you're not alone in this and that there's nothing wrong with you. There are many theories as to why there is this natural inclination to crave more pleasurable food at night, but I think the most convincing explanation of this appetite pattern comes from an evolutionary perspective. During the day, we're doing what could be likened to our ancestors being in hunting mode. We're working, we're moving, we're getting things done, and taking care of our needs and the needs of our children or those around us. Once we slow down at night, our survival mechanisms seem to recognize this and signal time to eat. It's as if we're wired to want to eat more at night to refuel from the day and to replenish those energy stores that we lost while we were out working and doing things we needed to do, and in order to store up more energy for tomorrow. Another reason we're all more inclined to crave sweets at night is for quick energy in the moment. At night, you're likely very tired, and your brain's and your body's energy are depleted. If you choose to stay awake or you have to stay awake, your brain will naturally view sugary food as attractive and as rewarding, because it is a source of quick energy. Sure, something healthy would do the trick as well, but for most people, that's not what's the most appealing after dark. What's most appealing is typically very pleasurable. Added to that, your self-control functions are actually a little lower at night, which I've explained in other episodes. And this is just due to fatigue, and it doesn't mean you don't have any self-control. It just explains why a lot of people don't make their healthiest food choices or their best decisions when they're tired. The combination of this reduced self-control, coupled with the desire for pleasure, is why you'll hear even normal eaters say they don't make their best food choices at night. And they might lament what they ate last night. You might hear just normal people having these kind of conversations. It's very common. But, like I mentioned earlier, this isn't necessarily problematic. A lot of people can simply enjoy a treat at night. They may even look forward to it. And having that treat satisfies their craving, and it's not an issue at all. And they don't feel guilty and they don't feel bad afterward. However, if you're currently a binge eater, you may find that these natural mechanisms that lead to more night cravings may often lead directly to your urges to binge. This could be due to conditioning if you're someone who has binged frequently at night and you've just created that habit. Or it could be that when you follow these night cravings, you have thoughts that say, oh, you've already blown it, so you might as well keep eating, and that leads directly into your binges. One thing I think is very important to mention when it comes to night cravings is that you may have been told somewhere along the way that wanting to eat at night is a signal that something is very wrong with you. You may have been told it's because you're not emotionally fulfilled, or that your day was too stressful, or that maybe you didn't eat the right foods for breakfast or lunch or dinner. But even though stress and sleep and diet patterns certainly can play a role in the frequency and intensity of food cravings, it's still so important not to think that something must be very wrong with you because you're more interested in food at night. Realizing that this pattern is extremely common may help you spend less time asking why or what's wrong with me, and instead focusing your energy on some useful strategies to manage the cravings when they do occur. Common advice and common strategies for dealing with night eating include things like keeping healthier food options in the house, making sure you're eating enough throughout the day, eating dinner a little bit later, possibly doing some light exercise at night, staying hydrated can be important, possibly taking some supplements, also making plans for when the cravings hit, or simply going to bed earlier. All of these suggestions are definitely useful, but I also want to give you some more things to think about when you have night cravings. I have 4 tips that I'm going to share through the remainder of this episode. My first tip is to stop telling yourself you should not eat at night. You've likely heard the common theory that eating late at night leads to more weight gain, but I want you to know that this is not definitively proven. And there are actually studies, again that I cite in my books, that show that night eating is actually better for fat loss, or that simply show that overall intake matters more than the timing. You can't take all weight loss advice that you hear at face value, and then use it to make these rigid rules for yourself that feel very restrictive. Telling yourself, it's late, I can't eat anything right now, can lead you to actually want to eat even more. You do have the freedom to eat at night if you want to, but only you can make that choice. Regardless of the time on the clock, you should eat when you're hungry. If you're someone who struggles with sleeplessness, or if you're awake dealing with small children or possibly working very late into the night, it's not a surprise that you'll get hungry. And if you tell yourself that you cannot eat, it's not honoring your body and your physical needs, and your cravings will increase. My next piece of advice is to enjoy your late night snack. And what I mean by this is, if you decide to eat something at night, either before bed or if you wake up in the middle of the night, don't do it in a guilt-ridden way. Try to make a genuine choice about what you're going to eat, and then own that choice and enjoy the food. It may help you to put food on a plate and then go sit down to eat it instead of standing at the refrigerator or the pantry, because putting food on a plate and actually serving yourself something feels more like a well-thought-out choice instead of an impulsive one. While we're talking about eating late at night, I want to share a personal story about when I was in therapy for bulimia. And during this time, I worked with a nutritionist, and she created a meal plan for me. And in that meal plan, she basically spread out my calories evenly during the day. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it just didn't quite feel right to me at the time, because I didn't find myself wanting a big breakfast or a big lunch, and I found myself basically forcing it in. Then I'd come to the end of the day not feeling like my dinner or my bedtime snack were big enough. And this became frustrating for me, and I'd almost feel resentful eating my dinner and my bedtime snack, like it just didn't feel like enough. But if I decided to eat something extra late at night and go over what my meal plan said, I'd feel so guilty, and I wouldn't truly enjoy it. And this mindset of, oh gosh, I already blew it, often led directly to urges to binge, and then instead of just having something extra to satisfy my hunger, I would eat several more thousand calories after that initial snack. Now looking back, I can see that personally, I needed more calories at night. I was an athlete at the time, and big meals during the day weren't very practical because they made me feel kind of sluggish for practices and trainings and competitions. I needed more food at night because that's when my body signaled me to replenish my energy reserves. Altering my eating plan would not have completely stopped my binge eating because at the time I did not know how to deal with the binge urges. But there was simply no need for me to beat myself up over wanting to eat more at night. I should have eaten a little less during the day to fit my lifestyle, and then enjoyed a larger dinner and bedtime snack without feeling guilty about it or without all the shame. Everyone has different patterns, so trust yourself to settle on eating times that work for you, and don't feel guilty if you find yourself eating more at night. My third piece of advice is, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, you should look into the possibility of blood sugar drops or blood sugar issues. And I want you to remember that this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice, so if you do have blood sugar concerns, you need to seek appropriate medical attention. But I just want to mention that if you're waking up out of a deep sleep in the middle of the night and you're feeling hungry, it could be a drop in blood sugar, and that's waking you up. And there are several strategies to deal with this. You may find it helpful to eat something right before bed that will help regulate your blood sugar. It might include some protein and some healthy fat and possibly some high-quality carbohydrates. But again, talk to your doctor if you think blood sugar is a concern. I just want you to not beat yourself up if you're waking up wanting to eat when maybe there's something else going on. My fourth and final suggestion as it relates to night eating is to dismiss the problematic night cravings. If your night cravings feel problematic, then it absolutely makes sense to address them. Just because it's normal and it's common doesn't mean you have to keep following these type of cravings if following them is not making you feel good. It's important to know that you get to choose whether or not to follow any type of craving. Yes, it's okay to follow these cravings in moderation, and yes, it's great to enjoy whatever food you choose to eat at night, but you're still capable of drawing a line when enough is enough, or deciding simply to say no if you know that eating more at night will make you feel bad. You can use the same strategies to dismiss problematic night cravings that you use to dismiss binge urges, along with any other strategy that may help you. And always know that whether you choose to follow night cravings or not, it never has to lead to a binge. You can have a snack at night. You can even maybe overeat a little bit at night and still choose to dismiss any urge to binge that follows. That's all for my discussion of night eating. I hope it helps you tonight or any other night that you find yourself having food cravings. And as always, I want to offer you my free ebook to help you learn to dismiss binge urges. And by signing up to get that ebook, you'll also receive my monthly newsletter, which contains many resources to help you in recovery. I appreciate you being here today, and I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.